when people became really excited about it, I was probably the one person that was more shocked than anyone else, because it had been so successful.
Okay, it took you a while to get over that shock. You didn't anticipate this kind of success, but it was your idea, and people say that it is absolutely amazing. I mean, it's like marketing genius to come up with idea like that. What about the record labels? How does it work? Give us an insight. When an artist approaches a record label, how does it really work?
Nowadays, it's a bit different, because when I was on a major label, that was like 5-6 years ago when I signed, and the industry has changed so much even since then that people in record companies and record deals are just not the same as they used to be. I think that you find a lot of people these days who make a success of themselves independently, because there are so many avenues. There's so many ways in which you can reach out to people and online, and that's really significantly changed the way that people buy and sell music. But at the end of the day, I mean, major labels are still here. They're still going strong. They'll never disappear. But they're definitely not as strong as they used to be. And back in the day, you used to send your CDs off, and people would come down to shows and watch you play, and that was really old school methods. But nowadays, it's like you scout online, you look at people's MySpace, Facebook pages, you're all these kind of things. So it's very different, it's very different. And I think that for anybody who wants to make a success of themselves, I mean, I think that the really important thing is to understand this side of it, the business, and really get your head around that, because that's the future and that's where everybody's going to head towards,
All right, that's really interesting, a deep insight into the recording industry. But, I've heard so much about how recording labels would actually suppress the creativity of an artist, want things a certain way to make it popular, to make it saleable. Does it work these days?
I had that experience myself with my first record. I had already recorded it before I signed to a major label, and so I'd already made the record, and it was ready for release. With my second album, I made it under the guidance of a major label, and that was a much more complicated process, and there was a lot more people involved and more people to please, and so for me, I found that process quite difficult. And inevitably, I chose to back out of that and start my own label, which I do have. I have a record company called Guardian Angels Records, and we have 3 acts on there currently. And that was the best thing for me, was to be able to keep the creative control. But for a lot of people, it depends what you do. Really, it depends on the kind of music you make. A lot of people are very successful in their major labels and are quite happy to do so. So it's kind of like everybody has a different journey, and everybody needs different things from, whether it's a major label or whether it's an independent label. But I think, no matter what situation you're in, it's definitely important to keep creative control over what you do, because, at the end of the day, that's what your fans are interested in hearing is your music and in the way you want it to be put across.
Absolutely. Tell us about Merchants and Thieves.
Well, Merchants and Thieves is my third album, and we made this independently. This is the first record I made after I'd left Sony. And Merchants and Thieves was kind of like a breath of fresh air, because it was back to the basics. It was back to just me being the control panel. I was in control of the situation, and I chose what songs stayed on and what songs didn't go on there, and it was great. It was really cathartic to be able to make a record like that, and that didn't necessarily have to tick all these boxes. So I think, ironically enough, making an album under less pressure, I think actually made it a better album, because we all just were so relaxed when we recorded it, and it was very much just taken down live. Everything was recorded live. We all played at the same time. We were into capturing a live recording, as opposed to just spending hours and hours and hours in the studio layering up instruments. And that really kind of harks back to the days of like the Chess Records, those kind of labels where these people like James, just used to just sing, and that was it. That was the record. You know, it got pressed, and there it was on the radio. And so it was really cool to kind of to use those sorts of those recording methods. And so, you know, it's a great record. You know, we did well with it. It was #1 iTunes Blues album in the UK, and #5 iTunes Blues album in the States. And you know, I'm very proud of the album. You know, I think it's done great things for me.
So which is your favorite song in this album?
I think my favorite song is probably Gold Dust, because it's kind of my electric guitar debut. It's you know, I've always played acoustic guitar, and that was great, but you know, I recently got more into playing electric. You know, I wanted to be like Joan Jett and, you know, and really rock out on these guitars. So that was like my electric guitar debut. And actually, one of my favorite guitar players ever is Peter Green, because I am such a massive Fleetwood Mac fan. And I kind of tried to channel his playing in my guitar playing on that song. So that's like a really proud moment for me on that album.
Okay, Gold Dust, it is your favorite song. Also, I'm really curious, you know, why did you want to cover House of the Rising Sun, and how was it playing with Joe Bonamassa in This Old World?
Well, House of the Rising Sun came about after I played this festival in the UK called Vintage, and it celebrates British songs, you know, really like great British songs throughout the decades. And so I got picked to sing this song with an orchestra, and it was great, you know. And I'd never even, I mean, everybody plays House of the Rising Sun on the guitar. It's like one of the first songs they ever learned. But I'd never played it in this way with a huge orchestra, and it was, you know, a lot of people commented on it afterwards and said, you know, you sing that song really great, you should record it. So I did. But you know, the funny thing was that when I delved more into the song itself, I discovered that, you know, contrary to what I believed and what a lot of people believe, it wasn't written by the Animals. It's actually the author is still unknown. It's a mystery. It's a song from way back in, you know, couple hundred years ago.
It's a folk song, I was told.
It's a very old folk song, yeah. So, you know, that intrigued me even more, and it kind of adds to the song's mystique. You know, and when you sing it, you get the fact that the song has lived through all these years, but yet nobody still knows who wrote it. I think it's something really, really interesting. And so when you play it and sing it, it brings out all these really cool emotions in you. And I love the song. You know, and it was cool. I got to meet Eric Burdon because of it, and we chatted about the song and his beliefs and where he thought it came from. And you know, so it was just a really interesting experience. And working with Joe was a thrill, obviously. I mean, Joe's an incredible musician, and you know, probably the best guitar player in the world, in my opinion. And I don't say that because I'm biased, because I am his girlfriend, but I do genuinely believe he is the best guitar player in the world. So having him on the record was just, you know, was a great thing for me. As you know, as of one musician to another, I have great respect for him, and you know, personally speaking, because he's my boyfriend, it was a great moment for us to share.